Scaling is like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512. Like it's exponential versus linear. And I often say this, I used to say this all the time. I should say it more. One of the biggest problems with why people aren't more successful, in my opinion, is that they're thinking linearly in a universe of exponentials.
Welcome to Summer Farsi Experience. In this show, we'll be covering everything a new entrepreneur needs to know to set up their business and how you can grow and scale your business in the shortest possible time. If you have a question in mind, go to salmanfarsi.co/ask and submit your question. We might answer it in the next episode. Let's begin our today's episode. Today we have an amazing guest, Alan Lazaros. Alan is a business consultant specialized in helping business owners and executives maximize their growth, impact, and profitability. Today, Alan and I will be talking about growing and scaling a business. Let's welcome our guest.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, Alan, tell us how you got to where you are today. How did you start it?
So basically, you want me to tell my story?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot of, so I'm 32 years old. And so there's a lot that I can tell, but the shorter version of my story starts like this. So when I was 2 years old, unfortunately, my father passed away in a car accident. And so I say I was raised by two women. I was raised by my mother and my older sister. So I kind of had two mothers. I had a stepdad for a time as well, but basically, when my father got in a car accident and my mother had two children on her own, she didn't have a lot of choices. And so from a very, very, very young age, she always taught me, Alan, life is about choices. And as I get older and older and older, I realize how valuable that lesson is. And it's the one thing that I always come back to: what we choose to think, what we choose to say, what we choose to feel, what we choose to believe. More importantly, what we don't think, don't feel, don't say, and don't believe, limiting beliefs, stuff like that. But I'm 7 years old, and she basically said this. She said, Alan, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer. Aim high and you'll have choices. If you're a CEO, you can wake up one day and just decide to be a farmer. But if you're a farmer, you can't necessarily just switch it the other way around. So aim high and you'll have choices. She always taught me to aim high. And she injected a lot of self-belief into me. So fast forward, I think I'm probably like 11 or 12, maybe 10. We're in her car driving past a school in my country called Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's called WPI. And at the time, my uncle Merle, was the track and field coach at WPI at the time. And my mom basically said, Alan, you're good at math. You're really smart. Really smart people go there. You should go there one day. You should be an engineer. It's an engineering school, tech school, because engineers make a lot of money and you'll have choices. Again, aim high, you'll have choices. Fast forward. She took a big chance on me. 8th grade comes around. And at this point, I think I'm 13 years old. She said, Alan, I'm going to take a chance on you. I'm going to let you take 8th grade off. You don't have to try. Up to this point, I was getting all A's and B's. I was doing really well academically. And she's like, I'm going to let you just have fun in 8th grade. You still have to go to school, but you can just go have fun. Don't worry about it. As long as you promise me that you'll get the President's Award in high school. The President's Award at the time in my country was basically straight A's all through high school, every single report card, 4 times a year, every year for 4 years. And she took a chance on me. If you look at my academic career, it's all A's and B's, then it's C's, D's, and B's. And then in high school, it's straight A's. I got 1 B+ in honors English, and then I never took honors English again. Fast forward, we're doing my essay together. She's checking over my essay to go to WPI. And I'm actually reflecting in that essay on a conversation we had about choices. I get into WPI. I go for electrical and computer engineering. I quickly realized that I love people. I love conversation. I love communicating with others, and sitting behind a desk, basically designing circuits, wasn't necessarily my thing. So I did a lot of job hopping after that. I ended up going back for my master's degree, my MBA, my master's in business administration. And then after that, I went into corporate America. I started a little company called Campus Libre with some buddies of mine. That ended up falling through. I worked for a company called Oz Development. I worked for Sensata Technologies. Which used to be Texas Instruments. I worked for iRobot, a couple other companies. Eventually, I landed a company called Cognex. I started a little inside sales team with a coworker of mine, and then I get promoted to outside sales, and I'm really raising in terms of income. I'm making well over 6 figures at this point. And I remember I was up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. And at the time I managed all of Western New England for Cognex, Vermont, Connecticut, and Western Massachusetts. And I'm up in New Hampshire, with my little cousin. We're going to TGI Fridays. We were just playing Call of Duty. And basically I hit this intersection, this fork. We're going to TGI Fridays and it's dark. It's a winter night. And I thought the road stayed right. It actually stayed left. I end up on the wrong side of the road. I look up from the GPS and I see the brightest lights I'd ever seen. And I thought for sure. Now, for anyone who has had a life or death situation, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't, it's basically like, this was it. I thought this was it. I thought this was the end. Genuinely. It was the scariest moment of my life, hands down. And fortunately, I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat. I used to call it the tank. It's like a steel car, German engineered car, very heavy car. Both airbags did deploy. My little cousin hurt his knee. I hurt my face on the airbag, but we're okay. Now I'm 26 years old at the time. Now I'm 32. I was 26 at the time. My father passed away in a car accident when he was 28, when I was 2. So this really messed with me. Usually in my speeches, I show the car because this was not a fender bender. This car was completely totaled, absolutely smashed in. And I've seen the pictures of my father's car and they don't look that different. And so for me, I was sitting in an armchair after that, drinking whiskey, questioning my entire life. I was like, questioning, like I had so much regret about the choices I had made. And not because I lived a poor life necessarily, but because I wasn't really that conscious about my choices and about my decisions. Yes, I aimed high. Yes, I got an engineering degree. Yes, I did really well financially. Yes, I had a beautiful girlfriend and tons of friends. But did I really live a life true to myself? Now, I live by this simple quote. I told you I'd tell you the short version, but this is going to be a little longer. I live by the simple quote: you cannot see the darkness you cannot see the stars during the day. They're always there, but sometimes it takes the darkness to see clearly that which we simply could not within the light. If you're out there listening right now, emotional pain and challenge and adversity is a guarantee. There is no one who has ever escaped adversity. There's no one on this planet who hasn't had some form of emotional challenge or trauma or adversity. But it's what you do when you're in the dark. When you're in the dark, are you searching? Are you contemplating? And so I saw 2 stars in the dark. I had all that regret after the car accident. I realized that I have a second chance that my father never got. And I grew up my whole life hearing stories about John. And what I realize now, looking back, is that nobody talks about how he died. I'm the only one who talks about how he died, the car accident. Everyone talks about the stories and how he lived, how he chose to live. And so I vowed from that moment on, I'm never going to live any less than I can be ever again. So I saw 2 stars. One was Tony Robbins' TED Talk, Anthony Robbins' TED Talk, most powerful TED Talk I believe ever. And I've listened to many. And number 2 is a book, simple book by a woman named Bronnie Ware from Australia called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Have you ever read that?
No.
Okay. So simple book. She worked in hospice for 8 years. We actually have since interviewed her on the podcast. So it was cool to interview one of my heroes. But
that's great.
She wrote a simple book where she worked in hospice for 8 years. She thought that her job was to take care of the terminally ill. What her real job, she realized later, was to listen. And the people, the terminally ill, said, I wish, I wish, I wish. when they were reflecting on their life, they all had these regrets, these same common regrets, the top 5 regrets of the dying. The number 1 regret of the dying is I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. That was the big one for me. There's some other ones in there too. I wish I had the courage to express my true feelings. That's another one. But to this day, from when I found that book to now, I've had a flashcard in my pocket with all 5 regrets. The flashcard is actually right over there. It's not actually in my pocket. It's right over there. But the number 1 regret of the dying, I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. I realized that the reason I had so much regret after that car accident wasn't because I was a bad person, but it was because I was making decisions based on what others expected of me and not what I really wanted. I wasn't really following that inner compass. And I vowed from that day on to go all in on my own self-improvement, my own self-development, my own dreams, my own goals, and to really go all in on that calling that was always there that I wasn't really following as accurately or as consistently as I would have liked.
You mentioned your mom told you to take a year off at 8th grade. Have you ever questioned why did your mom say that?
Yeah. Have I ever asked her personally, or have I ever contemplated it?
Asked her personally.
Yeah. So I've talked to her about it. So basically it was, I think, it was her birthday recently, her 61st birthday. My girlfriend Emilia and I went and actually took her on a hike, and we had a little picnic, and we were talking about this. And she said, I forget which grade it was. I think it was 7th grade. I had a teacher named Mr. Ballounis, and she went to parent teacher conference. He was my math teacher. She went to parent teacher conference because she said, I just had to know. And what she meant by I had to know is like, is this gift going to stick? Because I always had a natural inclination for mathematics. And when she showed up, apparently Mr. Ballounis said, what are you doing here? Like, you don't need to be here. Like, your son's great. You like, what are you doing here? Right. Cause parent teacher conference is kind of like, hey, let's talk about your kid's development and, the struggles and challenges. And basically I was flourishing in math. And she said, I gotta ask, is this gift of his going to stick? Cause math was always straight A's for me. And he said, yeah, absolutely it is. And so I think that's why I think my mom really wanted me to not only aim high, but really lean into that gift of mathematics. And I'll tell you what, it's definitely proven incredibly valuable later on in life, especially in business.
Agreed. You and I have a lot of things in common. I'm also good at maths.
Good to hear it, brother.
I also faced a near-death situation last year, which changed my life.
Oh, really? The car accident? You had a car accident?
No, suicide.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry to hear that, brother, but I'm glad you're turning it around.
That was a gift from me. I get a new purpose in life.
Same.
We'll talk about that later. Okay. What's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
My biggest failure and what did I learn from it? I have so many. I believe failure is a thing that we all experience, but not everyone admits it. But I don't believe that. I don't believe in the finite version of failure where it's like, okay, I failed, so that's it. So what is my biggest failure? It's interesting because I would say my biggest failure is also my biggest success now. One of my biggest successes. I would say my biggest failure was in my early life, not realizing that the parts of me that are truly different are actually a really good thing. And so that's not probably the answer that you were expecting. I know a lot of your listeners are early entrepreneurs and or early in business. But I think that growing up, I grew up in an environment where I was definitely trying to fit in. And in hindsight, it's fascinating because there's no way I was gonna. I grew up in a very small town, and I've never been someone who didn't have massive dreams. I mean, I remember sitting at the kitchen table when I was 9 years old with my best friend talking about Lazaros, which is a company we were going to start, and we were going to create a video game called Musket: The American Revolution. And we were talking about how it was going to be from the third person perspective. And then it was going to be a first person shooter too, depending on the part of the battle that was going on. And it was going to be based on kind of the movie, The Patriot. But I mean, that's how big I always dreamed, even from such a young age. And so my biggest failure was failure to recognize that what makes me very different is actually the greatest gift I have. And so the biggest failure I have is trying to fit in with the wrong crowd, not because they're wrong or bad, but because they're not what I'm meant to be, what I'm supposed to be. And my biggest success now is leaning into what does make me unique, which I believe is a couple things. One, my level of self-belief is very, very high. But I don't just believe in myself. I believe in others. I believe in possibilities so much. I have an extreme future orientation. So, I am constantly designing and redesigning the future that I'm working toward. And I think I have a deep, deep understanding of the past, the present. And because of that, I can anticipate the future. I have strong pattern recognition skills. I don't know if that's the engineer in me or what, mathematics. And then the third thing is my ability to diagnose. I do a lot of coaching, and in my coaching framework, I have this pyramid of fulfillment, and it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but much more in depth and much more 21st century. And it's basically like a diagnostic where my clients go through it, and I can identify the part of their life that's actually, if they improve this one part, everything else will proliferate. Everything else will be better. And I think that I have the ability to identify root causes. Root cause analysis and pattern recognition are very unique to me. And I'm really good at that. I always have been. And then identify, rectify is what I call it. So I can identify the root cause of a challenge or a problem that's holding someone back, and I can help them rectify it. And so my biggest failure is not being able to do that with myself, which is this desire to belong and fit in where I never was supposed to. And then what's interesting is that my gift is now to help other people identify and rectify the root causes of their biggest problems. So that's my biggest failure and what I learned from it.
That's awesome.
Thank you, brother.
I believe you said you are good at recognizing patterns and other stuff. I personally feel that's because of maths, because that happens to me also.
Yeah, math mind.
Yeah. Why most of the early entrepreneurs fail? They love what they do. They're passionate about it. They're putting their everything. Then why?
They have the improper expectations. They have false expectations of what it means to be successful. So in my first company I ever started, it was called Campus Libre, and I had a team of 4. We had one person doing the UI, one person was the CEO, I was the chief marketing officer, and then we had someone doing database stuff on the back end. It was a website. It was basically like a campus specific Craigslist for textbooks. And back then I just had such a poor understanding of the long-term compound effect that it takes to actually create something truly magnificent and valuable. And I think that, like, we see movies like The Social Network, and we see Mark Zuckerberg being a college student in a college dorm and then building Facebook. And it's just not really that way, even for Mark, because that's an hour and a half movie that's trying to condensing, a decade of his life, right? Not really a decade, but like several years. And so the narrative bias, this story that we've told ourselves as early entrepreneurs that we're going to somehow blow up. And statistically speaking, it's the people that blow up are the people that really. Oh, okay. So this is the best way to explain it. If you send 1,000 people out into the desert to dig for oil, and they all do eventually find oil, but some people, become effective diggers and it takes them 15 years to strike oil. I would rather learn from that person than the person who drilled 3 holes and struck oil. And so going viral on YouTube or on Instagram or whatever, starting a podcast and blowing up within the first year, like those aren't the people you want to learn from, because those are the statistical anomalies. Those are the rarity. The one thing that you can count on as an early entrepreneur is that you're going to have to fail forward for probably, statistically speaking, many, many, many years before you get it right. And if you don't understand that in advance, you're probably going to quit. And we often say at Next Level University that failure isn't final unless you quit. But if you quit, like that's going to be failure. And I think it's because of false expectations of what it really takes to succeed in the long term.
Failure is important. You can learn without failing.
Need it.
How do you define scaling?
Ooh, how do I define scaling? Yeah. Exponential growth. So for anyone who didn't study mathematics much, scaling is like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512. Like it's exponential versus linear. And I often say this, I used to say this all the time. I should say it more. One of the biggest problems with why people aren't more successful, in my opinion, is that they're thinking linearly in a universe of exponentials. And so, if I take 30 linear paces towards you, that's 30 steps. But if I take those same 30 steps and go from 1 steps to 2 steps, to 4 steps to 8 steps to 16 steps, that same 30 actually would circumvent the globe. And so, if you double a penny every day for 31 days, you end up with $10.7 million, even though at 15 days, you're still in like the 5,000 or so range.
Yeah.
And so it's the fundamental scaling is basically, this is a better way to explain it since we're podcasting right now.
Yeah.
At Next Level University, what scaling means to me is if we help one person and that one person tells 2 people and those 2 people tell 2 people and those 2 people tell 2 people, you can reach hundreds of thousands of people fairly quickly if you can be consistent. And so what scaling means to me is scaling your time, scaling your mastery, scaling your impact, scaling your profitability, and doing that in a way that's sustainable over the long term, to have a bigger global perspective. Especially with technology, we have the ability to reach people all over the world with our products and services.
What things do you need to have in place before scaling?
Your habits and systems. So on the NLU team, so we have an 11-person global team, and it's all virtual. And I often talk about the 4 facets that I want to do corporate trainings actually on this. Number 1 is leadership. So leadership is vision and then leading by example. Leadership is vision and character. Number 2 is culture. Culture is the unwritten rules of an organization. So the question was, how do you scale? Leadership and culture. And culture is the core values that the leader embodies. Third is systems. Systems is the habits and processes that actually allow you to consistently and sustainably sustain the culture, sustain the team, sustain the mission, sustain the vision, sustain the leadership. And then last and final is team development. So like coaching and consulting with your team consistently. That's how you scale. So how does someone scale? You have to dial in your own leadership. You have to lead yourself first. Then you have to allow that leadership to ripple into whatever team or organization or company you're building. Then you have to have a system in place to consistently and sustainably track not only yourself, but your team. So we have something called peak performance tracking. We have a next level university team dashboard where all 11, well, not all 11, because some people aren't on it. So nine of our core team members are all doing peak performance tracking, and it's all in the dashboard. Every week we have a team huddle on Wednesdays. We do team deliverables every week, and it's all in our next level university team dashboard where everybody coordinates. And we use it actually in Google Sheets. So it's completely customized for us. Anyways, that's the systems. So you got to have the systems in place, and then you got to be able to coach your team. Or if you don't have a team, coach yourself until you do have a team. And so that's how you scale. Those things need to be in place. Otherwise, you'll never be able to scale.
So you have to look for leadership skills, culture, create culture system, and team development. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly. Yep. Those 4.
Yeah. So how do you develop leadership? How do someone develop leadership? Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to study it. If you want to be in shape, study fitness. If you want to be a leader, study leadership. Study, practice, teach is the mastery formula. I actually use a different one. So it's prep, rep, reflect, perfect. So prep is prepare for the thing you're going to do. So if you want to be a better leader, prepare to be a better leader, AKA study leadership. Then rep is like doing the actual thing, leading someone. So then you have to go and actually lead your team. So maybe that's on your weekly team huddle or whatever. So prep, rep. Okay. Prep is prepare. Rep is actually lead. Then reflect. Reflect is reflect on what just happened. Reflect on the team huddle. Reflect on the leadership. Reflect on the system. Reflect on how it's going. Then you perfect. What can I do differently? What do I need to implement differently next time as a leader? So how do you develop leadership? You study leadership. There's a bunch of great leadership trainings out there. I highly recommend the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. That's been a very good book. Right now, I'm reading a book called The Mentor Leader by Tony Dungy. There's a bunch of books on leadership. John Maxwell's probably the most profound leadership, quote unquote, expert that I've learned from, but Darren Hardy has some good stuff on leadership, but you have to study it. And the most important piece, believe it or not, is deciding in advance to be the best leader you can be. There's a lot of people that I coach that before coaching with me, they didn't consider themselves leaders, which was a major issue, because if you don't consider yourself a leader, why would you go study it? Why would you practice it? Why would you teach it? Why would you reflect on it? Right? So that's what I would say.
Okay. What are the challenges people face while scaling their business, and how do they overcome it?
The challenges people face when they're scaling their business is basically having more to do than can possibly get done. So I remember when Kevin and I, this was probably a year and a half ago, and we were absolutely just working to the bone, day in and day out. I think we were doing 5 episodes a week at that time. We had a small team, and we did what's called a time audit. And the time audit was basically this whiteboard over here in the studio. And we just wrote out everything that we spend time on. I mean, sleep is in there, fitness is in there, our intimate relationship is in there, everything, business-wise too. Coaching, consulting, podcasting, speaking, all of these things. And then we basically, there's 168 hours in a given week. So, 7 days times, 16 hours. So I forget, if you sleep 8, that means there's 16 hours in a day. But if you do 24 times 7, I believe it's 168. So we added sleep in there too. We wrote down everything we do in a week, and then we estimated how many hours per week we're doing that thing. And there was 42 items on this list, 42 things that we do every single week, every week. Audio editing and video editing and podcasting and coaching and consulting and the gym and our intimate relationship, all this stuff. We figured out that there was only 10 hours available after we wrote all that stuff out. 10 hours left out of the 168 hours, which you times by 2 because there's 2 of us. So basically, what are the challenges someone will face when it comes to scaling? There's always more to accomplish. And I told Kevin this early on in our journey. I said, Kev, just so you know, there will always be more to do than what we are ever capable of doing ourselves. And even when we have a team, there will always be more to accomplish than the team can accomplish. See, what's possible is always greater than what is happening. I'm going to say that again. What's possible is always and will always be greater than what's currently happening. The question is, how are you getting better and better and better? So the challenge, the biggest challenge, is to attract and retain the best people and to help consistently and sustainably help them grow into their own unique potential, while simultaneously making sure they're in the right position on the proverbial business field so that you can achieve the mission of the business. So the challenges that people will face when they scale, number 1, you will have more to do than you can possibly do, always, forever. Number 2, you will have to attract and sustain a peak performing team virtually for a competitive, for an affordable price based on where the business is at. Number 3 is, how do you align the people on your team's goals, core aspirations, core values, core beliefs, with the goals, core aspirations, core values, core beliefs of the business? Those are the major, major challenges. And that is, we can do a whole nother podcast on that if you wanted to, but that's what's the most challenging when it comes to scaling.
That was deep. Okay. Let's talk about your podcast.
Okay.
You have 700 plus episode, Next Level University. How do you use podcast in your business? Or what's the effect of a podcast in your business?
How do we fit podcasting into our business? I think we're one of the very few people in the world where the podcast is our business. But I think there's an important distinction that people need to realize, and I want to add as much value to your listeners as I can. See, there's a brand and there's a business. The brand is what you're known for. The business is where you make the most money. And so the top of the business model needs to be brand focused. So Next Level University is the brand, but where we make most of our money is actually helping podcasters like you grow and scale and start podcasts and monetize their shows. So we have something called Next Level Podcast Solutions that is the majority of our revenue. And then we have something called Next Level Business Solutions, which is my consulting agency within the NLU, the Next Level Universe. So Next Level Universe is the entire business model. Next Level University is the brand. But then we have products and services and businesses within that brand that actually make money. And so the brand feeds the business with warm leads of people who know, like, and trust our content and trust us. And then the business feeds the brand with revenue, marketing dollars, team dollars, equipment dollars. And so it's this yin and yang cycle where the brand feeds the business and the business feeds the brand and the brand feeds the business, and it snowballs. It's supposed to snowball. And so the podcast is our business and it is our brand, but the main business is actually Next Level Podcast Solutions and Next Level Business Solutions. And so that's kind of how it all works together and fits.
That's awesome.
Appreciate you, brother.
You have actually answered 2 of my questions.
Glad to hear it. I anticipated the future. No.
Okay. In the beginning, where should you focus in terms of growing your business?
In the beginning, why should you focus on growing your business?
Yeah.
The business is the vehicle to achieve the mission. So if anyone's out there listening to this and you're not driving, write this down. At the very top of the page, write mission. Below that, you write business. Below that, you write team. Below that, you write systems and processes. Below that, you write products and services. And below that, you write clients and customers. See, the business is the vehicle to achieve the mission. So I'll go through them one by one. First one, mission. What is that? Why do you even have a business in the first place? What is it you're trying to accomplish? So for us, we want to put holistic self-improvement in the pocket of every individual on the planet every day, completely free. We do 7 episodes a week, every single day. You brush your teeth every day. You can listen to NLU every day. Steve Jobs wanted to put 1,000 songs in your pocket. We want to put holistic self-improvement in your pocket. And by the way, holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, and love. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, wealth. How much money do you make? How do you make your money? And do you love what you do? And then where do you invest it? And then love, friends, family, intimate relationship, mentors, mentees, clients, customers, all that stuff. Holistic self-improvement. So that's the mission. The business exists to achieve the mission. Okay. The business is mastery, impact, and profitability. How do you make your money and what value do you add to the world? The team runs the business. So the business runs the mission and the team runs the business. Now, the systems and processes keep the business afloat, keep the business scaling, keep the team scaling. Now you have products and services. The products and services are what generates the revenue for the team, for the systems and processes, for the business, and for the mission. Then you have your clients and customers. And your clients and customers are the ones who are buying the products and services, which is actually what's producing the revenue. So the thing that I think is most important to answer your original question, why do you focus on growing your business? It needs to be a win-win-win-win-win-win. See, some businesses are good for the mission and good for the business and good for the team, but not good for the environment. See, some businesses are good for the business owners and good for the shareholders, but not good for the employees. See, not only am I into holistic self-improvement, but I'm into holistic business. See, I want it to be good for the mission, good for the business, good for the team, good for the systems and processes, good for the customers and clients, and good for the products and services. And I want it to be good for the world. I want it to be good for the environment. I don't want it to be detrimental to the world. So why focus on growing your business? Because the world has a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. That's what business is for. Business solves problems. Business helps us innovate. I have an iPhone over here that I can text my team member from Italy, Alessandro, and he can get back to me on WhatsApp within a millisecond. See, 50 years ago, not 50 years ago, we'll call it 80 years ago, I would have had to write a letter and had that put on a ship and had the ship go to Italy. And then he would respond, write a letter back, and I might get a response within 3-4 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years. I don't know. See, Steve Jobs created the iPhone. Apple created the iPhone. So why focus on growing your business? Because the world probably needs whatever it is that you specifically are supposed to innovate in this world, as long as it's good for not just you, but also your team and also the world.
There's a lot of problem needs to be solved.
Oh, so many.
So you have to focus on the mission, then business, then your team, then the system, then the product or service you want to say, then your clients or customers.
I actually reverse engineer it, starting with the clients and customers.
Yeah. Okay.
So our listeners, I told Kevin this recently, I said our listeners need to always be the main focus, because our listeners are how we achieve the mission. The mission is to have holistic self-improvement in the pocket of our listeners.
Okay, we are almost at the end. What's your best advice for who have just started their business?
My best advice for people who just started their
Start the
business.
Yeah.
Get advice from people. The first piece of advice is this: don't take advice from people who don't have real tangible results. You got to be really careful of social media land. I've been very fortunate at this point to meet hundreds, if not thousands of people. I've had hundreds of interviews. I've had thousands of hours coaching and consulting, speaking, podcasting, all that. And what I can tell you for sure is that there's a lot of people out there that are portraying an image of themselves that is not real. And so my number one piece of advice is get mentors. My number two piece of advice is be very, very careful who you put that student cap on for. You need to be very, very careful and make sure that they really know what they're talking about and that it's not a facade of social media. I know some people that have a huge following and that's great, but when it comes to running their actual business, they don't make that much money. And then I know other people who you would think have no money and don't make any money in their business who actually are multimillionaires and you would never know it. I have one client who's very modest and she's a multimillionaire, but you would never know it because she's just very modest and she doesn't have 100,000 Instagram followers, So you just got to be really careful who you learn from, make sure they're the real deal and make sure their real life behind the scenes is what's being mastered and not just the packaging of the product, if that makes sense, the packaging, the marketing and all that.
I totally agree with you.
Appreciate it, brother.
So where can our listeners find you?
So your listeners can find me anywhere podcasts are listened to. Type in Next Level University. We will come right up. We're also on YouTube. But the best place to reach out to me personally, if any of this resonated, is Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Alan Lazaros, ALAN. Last name Lazaros, LAZAROS. Again, LAZAROS. My Instagram handle is alazarus88. I was born in 1988. But if you type in Alan Lazaros in Google, all my social media will come right up. Reach out on Instagram, reach out on Facebook, reach out on LinkedIn, whichever platform you prefer. Between myself and my assistant, we respond to everyone very quickly. And I know you can attest to that because you reached out to me.
Yeah.
My assistant, Amy, is amazing. She'll get right back to you. Please reach out. And she does send me the screenshots of anyone. If this resonated, if this brought you value, please tell me. I love that. And I would love to connect.
Okay. That's it for today. Thanks for your time, Alan.
You are so very welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for joining us today. Hit the subscribe button. And if you are listening this on Apple Podcast, please leave a review. This will really help us to make our future episodes better. Have a question in mind? Go to salmanfarsi.co/ask and submit your question. We see every submission and we might answer it in the next episode. Thanks again for listening. We will see you on Tuesday and Thursday. Have a great week.